Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. As always, on the call, one of your hosts of this amazing show, myself, Jurg. Alongside with me tonight is Dame. Sadly, no Chris with us tonight. Our fearless leader is unable to make it tonight due to a handful of reasons. Nothing crazy, nothing serious. Communicated with him beforehand. It's nothing bad. Chris is just unable to make it tonight, so. Thankfully, it's nothing serious. He should most likely be back next week, but for now, he is with trusting myself and Dame to run tonight. I trust his faith in Dame. Me, I'm not sure if he's made the right decision, but we'll see with what tonight's episode brings us. But like I said, Dame is with me. Dame, how we doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm very excited for us to preview the NFL Wildcard Weekend, Super Wildcard Weekend, as it's been called. I'm definitely excited about that. We're gonna be reviewing some of the NFL job openings from this past week. As everyone knows, after the season ends, Black Monday has become a thing where coaches and general managers get fired around or on Monday itself. But before we get to that, Dame, a couple weeks ago we talked about the Blake Snell and Yu Darvish moves by the San Diego Padres. Well, it turns out another organization has decided to make a big time trade. Just a couple hours ago from when we are recording this, the New York Mets finalized a trade to acquire Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco from the Cleveland Indians in exchange for a package of 4 players. I'll let Dame go into the details of everything. I'll just give my take on it really fast. For myself, I like many baseball fans. We all know how good Lindor is. He's been one of the better infielders in the game for a while now. And Carrasco, even though he's not great anymore, I personally think it's still a solid thing to get with you in the deal, especially because I feel the Indians just wanted to clear up that salary at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel it's a solid deal for them. But for the Mets, this is definitely a big time deal. That when you bring in new ownership, you want to make that statement. You want to make it known to the fans, okay, this is not just going to be the same old Mets. We're going to try to do something here. And I think this was a massive move. And again, for the Indians, again, Dame, I'm about to throw it to you. You can kind of review what they got back. I don't really want to say if it's a W or a loss for them yet. I just think they kind of knew that they were going to lose Lindor eventually, and they just had to pull off the move, and they got Carrasco off. So, Dame, what are your thoughts on this?
So yeah, the Mets got Lindor, which is the big fish in the deal. But then it was also surprised that they got Carlos Carrasco in the deal. But then looking back at it, the Indians clearly were trying to move money, and Carrasco was their second highest paid player behind Lindor, so they got rid of both, and they got back two really good young shortstops who were at one time two of the best prospects in baseball, and Ahmed Rosario and Andres Jimenez. I don't know how they're gonna split these guys up. Maybe probably shortstop and second base, and keep Jose Ramirez at third. But those are two good pieces to get back in the trade. And then the other two prospects are kind of just like wild cards. Josh Wolf was the Mets number 9 prospect. He's a pitcher, and very very young outfielder Isaiah Green, who's their number 10 prospect. These two guys don't really have much they aren't really high regarded, but they're just
Mm-hmm.
young Kyle and wild card prospects to throw in a trade. But the two big prospects or players in the trade that the Indians got back were Rosario and Jimenez. Um, at the top of the trade, these are really good pieces to get back. I just don't like what they got on the back end with the two wild card prospects. I
Mm-hmm.
thought they would have got Rosario or Jimenez or both, plus maybe a better pitching prospect. But overall, I'm not a fan of the deal because the Indians aren't really trying to be better and trying to win. Their
Right.
payroll for next year is $35 million, and to really show you how low that is, Garrett Cole of the Yankees makes $36 million a year by himself. So
Whew.
one player on the Yankees is making more than the entire roster for the Cleveland Indians. I don't think it's a good look for baseball at all that this is happening, but clearly, the Indians don't want to be paying anybody, so they had to make a move like this. I'm assuming this is the best they could get, so I get it. A lot of people were saying this is very similar to the Dodgers Red Sox trade last year with Mookie Betts,
Mm-hmm.
where the Dodgers got Alex Verdugo, Jeter Downs, and Connor Wong, which Verdugo and Downs are the two big prospects, and Connor Wong was kind of the wild card. And in
Right.
return, the Dodgers got Mookie Betts, who's similar to Francisco Lindor, is one of the best players in baseball. And then they got a starting pitcher who the other team was just trying to get rid of their contract, and David Price, similar to Carlos Carrasco. Even though David Price makes more, but David Price is a better pitcher as well, so kind of evens out.
Right.
But yeah, so I kind of see these two deals being very similar. It's kind of ironic because when Steve Cohen had his introductory press conference, when they asked him which franchise he wants to model himself around, it was the Dodgers. And lo
Right.
and behold, comes out and makes a very similar trade to the Dodgers. Um, when it comes down to the Mets, I really like it for them. They get a starting pitcher, although, like you said, Carrasco isn't the same pitcher he used to be. He's a very viable starter to put right behind Jacob DeGrom until Noah
Yeah.
Syndergaard comes back from Tommy John. And of course, Francisco Lindor, you put him at the top of the lineup. You put him at shortstop every day. You know he's going to give you one of the best productions in the league. He always stays healthy. He's not a player that gets hurt a lot. Of course, it puts them as a championship contender, I think. I don't think it puts them over the Braves in their own division or the Dodgers in the entire National League, but it puts them right
Right.
up there and gives them a fighting shot against anybody. Another part, the last part of this deal that I want to talk about is the fact that, of course, the Mets are going to have to extend Lindor, or this trade just really doesn't look good for them at all.
Right.
Same thing as Mookie Betts. They made the trade, but they didn't extend them right away. It took some time for them to get accustomed. Both Mookie Betts and the Dodgers to get accustomed to each other. I think the same thing
Yeah.
is going to happen with the Mets. They're going to bring him to spring training, bring him around the ball club. They're going to let Lindor really feel himself out. And then once they both like each other, that's when they'll talk about extension talks. I just wrote down three of the contracts I think are going to be based off Lindor's extension. So Manny Machado, a third baseman, he got 10 years, 300 million from the Padres. Mookie Betts got 12 years, $365 million, and Bryce Harper got 13 for 330. So what
Oof.
my guess is going to be is that Lindor will get the 10 years and he'll get 335 million. 10 years
Ooh.
matching with the Machado deal, and then
Okay.
with Bryce Harper, he'll get 335, so he'll get five more than Bryce. The reason I have him over Mookie Betts is because straight up, I just think Mookie Betts is a better player, and he's taking less
Right.
years and more money per year than Mookie Betts would.
Right. And also when you think of Betts, you're also thinking of a guy who's won a couple championships now.
Exactly.
He's
Yep.
been named an AL MVP and has a very legit shot at winning an NL MVP during his prime years with the Dodgers.
Yep.
So
Pretty sure he finished
uh
second this year too in NL MVP.
yeah, yeah. So, that's definitely a guy. It's kind of hard to argue, paying him more than that guy, but pretty close, especially like you said with Machado and Bryce. I think those are two very comparable deals.
Yeah. Yep.
Uh Yeah, so I completely agree. I think for the Mets, this is a big time deal to get a guy like Lindor, who from 2017 to 2019, three straight seasons, he always hit 30 home runs or more. He had a 7.9 WAR in 2018, and this is a guy who's won multiple Silver Sluggers and Gold Gloves. So you're getting a very good defensive player as well. And I agree with you. I think Mets fans, they shouldn't expect the extension right away. Kind of like with Betts with the Dodgers. I think, Lindor needs to get used to not just the organization, but also the city. New York is a very tough city to play in. And, if you're going to be the guy that when the Mets get you, you kind of add some expectation. I think he needs to get used to that a little bit. And once he gets used to it, once he's fine with it, once he knows the team and the organization's behind him, I definitely see them working on the contract right away after. Uh, like you said, them getting Carrasco, I think this could end up being really good for Carrasco because potentially, the pressure is no longer really going to be on him anymore like it was in Cleveland. He's just going to be relied on as, be pretty good, be as good as you can be, but you're not the ace for us. And when Syndergaard comes back, he would really be the number three, and depending on who else develops for the Mets. So I think this could be, that kind of change of scenery that a guy like Carrasco needs in order to, just bounce back and, give himself a little bit more juice here in the later stages of his career. And like you said, like for the Indians, like I think it's very interesting because when I was looking at Wolf and Green, I was looking them up. They're both very recent prospects, only drafted in the last couple years. And I think what you were alluding to Green was the fact that we didn't even get to see him play this past year because minor league baseball as a whole was canceled because of the pandemic. So it's going to be really interesting. Overall, I think this is definitely a solid trade for the Mets. I don't think there's I will say for the Indians, by the way, because you mentioned the payroll, and I think that's a big thing. I think and I agree with you. I think eventually the Indians knew they were going to get rid of Lindor, But I especially think like part of this to me in my mind, especially with the low payroll, I feel like with the Indians in particular, kind of has to do with maybe some of the losses they took due to the pandemic. Now, obviously, that's not a definitive statement because we would probably be seeing a few more teams do stuff like that. But I just feel some of these teams, I wouldn't be shocked how heavily the pandemic and the profits lost is going to weigh on some of these owners' minds. Because if you look at some of the other sports, the NBA is rumored on trying to expand, get more teams in there to get loss to somewhat make up for lost revenues. And the NHL is going to sell ads on not just the jerseys but the helmets as well. And all the divisions actually this season are sponsored. So like these leagues are going to try to do whatever they can to make up money. So I wouldn't be shocked if for the Indians this was definitively that the pandemic was the ultimate straw that broke the camel's back, where it's like, okay, we have to trade him now because we don't want to pay any more money to him no matter what. So that's just my opinion. That's just a thought. But I wouldn't be surprised if that had been an idea going through the mind with this trade.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
sure. I'm sure the pandemic has a lot to do with them trying to get rid of money. Just me personally, I think just having a $35 million payroll is ridiculous. That's it.
right,
Like I'm sure.
right.
I 100% getting cutting costs because of the pandemic. My own team, the Yankees, seem like they're doing it. They're not really being aggressive in free agency, but just having a $35 million payroll, I think, is just ridiculous. And I just feel bad for the fans that they have to have something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And, that kind of wraps up talk about it. But I will say this. I think the ultimate way to describe this is, and Chris texted me this, and I quote, the Mets are back.
Oh,
So,
he's been saying they're back for the past 5 years until like, we'll see how it goes.
So for you Mets fans out there, obviously we'll wait and see what it looks like on the field. But if there's any indication, this is at least a step in the right direction. And I'm assuming he's a Mets fan for saying this, but the Mets are back, man.
I
According
don't even
according
know.
to Chris.
I don't even know what he is, but yeah.
Okay, so now moving on from baseball talk, obviously as Dame alluded to, we will talk more once more moves happen in free agency. With some and of course trades as well, because this is the second time within a handful of weeks that or second team in a handful of weeks that has made a massive deal. Moving on to Black Monday in the NFL. So a couple of these moves were reported on or done before, or some of these openings, I should say, were kind of reported on beforehand, and they were all essentially made finalized on Black Monday. So the head coaching vacancies in the NFL. The Houston Texans, the Detroit Lions, the New York Jets, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and of course the Atlanta Falcons from earlier this season all need new head coaches. General manager wise, a little bit of discrepancy. The Texans were on this list, but they just recently hired their newest general manager within the last day or so. So that leaves the Detroit Lions, who also need a coach, the Atlanta Falcons, and the Jets, who both need coaches, the Carolina Panthers, and the Washington football team, who both have coaches but just need general managers, and the Denver Broncos, who John Elway, he was essentially, the job was essentially taken from him, but he was fired via promotion, which is a common tactic that teams like to use. I don't know why. You don't really need to protect this guy. Well, I guess you kind of have to ego-wise. But, paycheck-wise, I think John Elway could have just retired. But to each his own, he still wanted to be with the organization in some way. So they decided to do that. So, Dame, right off the bat, we got a couple of these teams that have both head coach and GM open. I want to get your opinion of these organizations. Which one, right off the bat, do you think is the most attractive to a head coach or a GM?
So for the GM, I don't like any of their openings besides
Mm-hmm.
maybe kind of like the Panthers for GM.
Right.
Just because they already have Christian McCaffrey, they have the seventh pick in the draft where they're probably going to get a quarterback. The defense is young and upcoming. They're not there yet, but they have the
Right.
pieces there. Overall, that's the Broncos. I don't know. They just with John Elway there. I don't think I've never had confidence in him, and I just think
Right.
as a GM, even if John Elway kind of took himself out of that spot, he's still gonna have the final say in everything. So GM's not really gonna be able to do his own thing. Washington's pretty good, but again, they don't. Their quarterback situation is kind of messy, and they're gonna
Right.
have the 19th pick in the draft. So it's kind of gonna be kind of hard to upgrade that position with that kind of draft pick. With the Falcons, you just never know with them with the general manager position. Because Julio and Matt Ryan could both be traded. The owner came out and said that. They do have
Right.
the fourth pick in the draft, but who knows what they're going to do with it? Are they going to go QB? Or are they going to go defense? Are they going to add yet another first round offensive pick? You never know. The
Right.
Lions, I just think, are an absolute mess. I don't know what direction they're going in. They need a new coach, GM. They need a new QB, defense, everything.
Right.
Um, but straight up, based off head coaching, what head coach spot is the best? I think it's the LA Chargers. First off, being straight up, it's Los Angeles. Los Angeles is beautiful. They have that brand new
Yeah.
stadium. Fans still haven't been allowed there, but just off teams playing it and just TV, just off seeing it off TV, it looks absolutely amazing. Living in LA, you have of course Justin Herbert, who looks like a franchise quarterback off his first season. They have the 13th pick in the draft, which obviously isn't great, but it's not bad at all either. Especially when you already have your QB, you could use that pick for anything else. They have a bit of
Right.
cap space. They don't have a lot, but they have enough to really improve that team. So, to me, that's the best GM. That's the best coaching opening that there is. Then after that, in my opinion, it gets kind of messy between the Texans, Jags, and Jets. In my opinion, the Texans with Deshaun Watson would be the second best, but now we're hearing this morning that there might be rumblings about Deshaun Watson wanting out. If
Right.
that's the case, then I think that really drops him out of being a very attractive coaching spot. Because if you have no Deshaun Watson, what do you really have on that team? Aging
Right.
JJ Watt. Now with the
Exactly.
Jets and Jags, I think it's kind of neck and neck. We have the first, second pick in the draft. You take whatever quarterback you want. You have over $100 million in cap space. Both teams have two first round picks. The Jags have two second round picks this year, but the Jets have two first round picks next year. So those are two really good spots if you are going to a team that wants to rebuild. You have everything you need to rebuild. You just got to build from the ground up. Yeah, that's how I view these openings.
Right. So I'm definitely with you on the Chargers. I 100% agree that they should be the favorite, especially because, Tom Telesco being there, the general manager, he's a very good general manager. He learned with the Indianapolis Colts for a very, very long time under some great guys like Bill Polian and Chris Ballard. So when you get to learn under two of those guys, who Polian, um, in his time during his eras as a GM was phenomenal, and then Chris
One of the
Ballard, who's
best.
done an exceptional job. Yeah, exactly. And then Chris Ballard, who's done an exceptional job with the Colts, really building them back up, and even losing a franchise QB to have made the playoffs a couple times without Andrew Luck, uh, says a lot. Or excuse me, the making it this year without Andrew Luck, that says a lot about him and the character of that organization. So Telesco's there. And like you said, Herbert, and it's not even just Herbert. Like, you have some solid pieces on the offensive line. Forrest Lamp, I think, is a good guard. There's Mike Williams there and Keenan Allen. Hunter Henry is there. And then defensively, there's I look at it as on the defensive line, you have Joey Bosa to lead. And in the defensive backfield, you have Derwin James, who I know he's been hurt, a little bit
Yeah,
these past few years. But
he missed his whole last season,
yeah,
and so he's coming back. That's another addition to that team.
exactly. And that's just another guy. Like, I think universally in the NFL world, I think it was an agreed upon thing where had the Chargers had a much better coach this season, and I don't want to completely discredit Anthony Lynn. He was a solid coach his first few years. Some would say he overachieved his first handful of years with the team, but when you fail to adapt to what the teams in your division are doing, what your opponents are doing, that's kind of what fails you. And when you don't have good situational awareness and play calling, like we saw several times this season. Um, and so I think that's going to be a key thing. And I think a lot of people would have agreed, like, if they had had a person better in those aspects, they would have been a lot better this year. And I think that's a legitimate argument. So I think the right hire here, again, how rare is it when you get to go to an organization and the franchise quarterback is there? Like, that is such a rare thing that
Extremely
any
rare.
head coach would
You don't
jump
see
at.
that a lot in the NFL.
Yeah, normally the head coach goes there and he has to work with the GM on, like, who should they get. No. This is your guy is there. There's only one negative that I've heard people talk about it with this job opening, and it has nothing to do with the job itself. Like you said, LA's beautiful, the team is good, Telesco's great. It's just that they're in the same division as the Chiefs, and while that might be a challenge, if we're looking at just the job itself, this is clearly the number one job. After that, I think it's very tough. I've heard a lot of people say that Jaguars job is great, and I'm just not 100% sold, man. Like, I know they're going to have the first overall pick, and I know they're going to draft Trevor Lawrence, and it's great. To be a head coach to walk into then like getting the next franchise QB, that's also a pretty good situation, right? But when when you look at this team the last decade, it's not even their first round picks that leave them, because that's happened the last few years. It's the first round picks that they miss on. Like people point at Ngakwe leaving and Jalen Ramsey and Dante Fowler. No, no, no. Look at the other first round picks that completely flopped that they selected, So while they're going to nail the Lawrence selection, what else are they going to nail in that draft, So I'm just concerned if I'm the head coach. And the general manager as well. Like, they need to get a good general manager there, first and foremost, Uh, and yeah, so I'm very 50-50 on that. The Jets, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, at least Joe Douglas is there, and I think Joe Douglas is going to make a very smart and educated pick, because now he gets to pick who he wants at both the head coach and likely the quarterback spot. So that's a good thing. And yeah, I think those are probably the main three tasks. Like you said, the Falcons' jobs are complicated because of the situations on the roster. The Detroit Lions are a mess. They just need people there to bring in some culture. Uh, and ultimately, the Houston Texans, like you said, Nick Caserio, who they just hired to be GM, he has a bit of a tough task ahead of him in regards to the Houston Texans. I think my thing is, regarding Deshaun Watson, we could go over this just for a quick moment. My thing is, I think Deshaun. I don't think Casario's gotten to speak to him yet. I think if Caserio gets Deshaun in a room, lays out a plan, talks to him, I think that these rumors will go away. That's my thing. I don't think he's gotten to speak to Deshaun yet. That's my number one thing. So until I want to wait like another week or so to see where these rumors are, because come a conversation or two, Caserio could convince him, like, look, I understand what just happened here, but trust me, we're gonna do some things, okay? And I think if that happens, I think if they just give Deshaun that vote, that confidence, I think these trade rumors will go away pretty quickly, and then that head coaching gig will be quite a bit more valuable, like you said, because you keep the franchise QB there. But aside from that, that's really about it. Do you have any final thoughts on any of these opening positions?
No, we kind of went over all of it. Yeah.
Right, right. And I think, like I said about the Jets, and I think you made a very good point about regarding them. I think it was a week ago or so, I forget when, but you mentioned how Joe Douglas, he didn't wait to become a general manager now to not have his pick at things. And I think that was a big role in him going to the owners and wanting Adam Gase out of there. And now he will get his pick of the litter in
Yeah.
terms of, yeah,
A
yeah,
big thing
go.
with the Jets is that before this, when with Adam Gase and Joe Douglas, ownership had the plan, the structure in place that they were kind of equals, that they both came together and they both had to make a decision together. But now, at the press conference with Chris Johnson, the Jets owner, he came out and said that now it's going to be Joe Douglas' show, that the head coach is going to report to the general manager, which is Joe Douglas, of course. They're not going to be equals. It's not going to be like head coach can make his own decisions like Adam Gase did when he traded away Darren Lee and stuff. No, it's going to
Right.
be the head coach reports straight to the general manager, and the general manager is going to make all the decisions instead. So that's going to be a new kind of structure that the Jets are going to have in their organization.
Absolutely. And it's also like, I think it's a thing where it's like in the right environment, a head coach and a GM working together can work. I really do think it can, but the problem is that that Jets environment was nowhere near the right environment. I think most would agree. Like a team, I think, kind of to end things off, I think the Washington football team, I think they have a chance to make it work because Ron Rivera, he's done a masterful job coaching up the team this year, and he finds the right guy that he can work with. The two of them work together properly. Like, I think Washington can do a good thing there. Because there's some talent on that defensive line. You have McLaurin there, a decent run game, and Brendan Scherf there is one of the lead offensive linemen. Washington is one of those things where, if the head coach and GM kind of have equal duties, not saying they definitively will, because Ron Rivera, it hasn't been said. He hasn't made it clear yet. There was a report saying that they talk about GM stuff after the playoff run ends for them. So We'll see on that. But I think Ron Rivera could make it work because he doesn't feel like the kind of guy who he just wants absolute power decision making. Like I don't think he'd mind if the right guy comes in to work with him.
Yep.
Yeah, but and that just goes to show that's what good leadership does. And I think some of these teams, they need that, you know. So moving on now, Dame. We've been waiting for this the entire season. There were some worries at times because old COVID was coming through the NFL, but we have made it. Super wild card weekend. We got 6 wild card games. The expanded playoff format. 7 teams each conference now. The Packers and the Chiefs have first round byes, and of course they will be facing the lowest remaining seed on their respective sides. So Dame, let's just jump right into this. We'll start off with the Saturday games here. The first game, the Indianapolis Colts versus the Buffalo Bills. Indy is going to Buffalo for the contest. Indy had to win to get into the playoffs, and they did their thing, and Miami also had to lose. And the team that Miami lost to was the Buffalo Bills, who hung 56 on them. So Dame, your thoughts on this matchup?
I think this is going to be actually one of the best games this weekend. These teams are so evenly matched. Yeah, the Bills have looked kind of the more flashy team most season, but the Colts have really low-key been one of the best teams in leagues as well. Their defense is one of the best, if not the best. Philip Rivers, although he's not the great elite quarterback in the league, but he's the perfect quarterback for this team because he's such a good game manager. So yeah, I see this being one of the best games this week, but I do have the Bills winning this game. Overall, I just think they are a better team. Josh Allen's a better quarterback. They have Stephon Diggs, and this is going to be the first time all season that the Bills have fans in Buffalo. Although it's going to be very limited, it's still going to be something to get the Bills team going in Buffalo. So yeah, I see the Bills winning this game. Let's see, prediction 24-17.
Okay, nice. So I'll say on the offhand, both myself and Chris agree with the ultimate winner. Both of us have the Buffalo Bills winning this contest. Chris did not provide me any scores. I'll give my score real quick, and then I'll explain why. I have the final score being 31-24, and here's why. Like, I think ultimately what this will come down to is Buffalo's offense is just so good. They only give away the ball 1.4 times per game. They're top 3 in average time of possession. They're the best in the league in third down conversion percentage. Total yards per game, they're second. Points per game, they're second. Like, this team has just been so good this year. And I do think overall that it'll give them the win. But I do not think it'll be a blowout. I know a lot of people are going to ride the high of, how good they were in that Miami game. But I think this Indianapolis team, like you said, Dame, I think they're very underrated. Philip Rivers this year, I think he's a little bit better than some may have realized this season. 68% of passes, solid touchdown interception ratio. I think the key for the Colts, if they want to have a shot in this, Rivers averaged about 33 pass attempts per game. I think they need to lower that, which leads me to the main reason. Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines have been absolute weapons for the Colts this season. And if it wasn't for them, they wouldn't be a playoff team. The two of them are fantastic. They can really help get a run-pass balance. And if you can get a balance against the Bills, I think that's what gives you a shot. And I think ultimately what will also be the key for the Colts, if they want to have a shot here, is the defensive playmaking. Their top 3 defensive backs have 8 interceptions and 25 pass deflections combined with one another. And you have guys like Buckner, Justin Houston, Danico Autry, who could try to cause pressure, which one of the keys, because I was looking at some of like the stats on Josh Allen this season. While it's a true thing for any quarterback that they won't do as good under pressure, Josh Allen, like, if they can really get him pressure, he is only in terms of adjusted completion percentage when under pressure, he's only in like the 20s for that. So that's a sign where if they can really, get him having to question himself, get him off balance, get him making some bad throws, this Colts team can make a play or two. That's why I don't think it's going to be too big of a blowout personally. That, and I also don't want to see many blowouts during this weekend. But ultimately, I do have the Bills winning this contest just because I think they've looked so good this season. I don't think this Colts team could beat them. I don't think this Colts team has enough pieces to overcome them. So I have the final score 31-24 Buffalo. Moving on to one of the more intriguing matchups of this wild card weekend. The Los Angeles Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. Division rivals. It's always interesting when they meet, and this will be the third time this season. I believe they went 1-1 in their split during the regular season, so this is the grudge match. Dame, who do you have winning this NFC West bloodbath?
I have the Seahawks win this game. Reason being is because Jared Goff, I don't think he's going to be 100% coming off the thumb surgery. He's listed as questionable. Of course, I think he's going to play, but I don't think that he's going to be 100%. The Seahawks defense has also played a lot better in the second half of the season, so I think that's going to be big. And I just think Russell Wilson is going to go back to being the Russell Wilson that was in the beginning of the season, where that offense was the best in the league and he was the leading MVP candidate. I don't think the Rams are going to score a lot of points this game. I have them at 13 and the Seahawks at 24. So the final score is 24-13. The big reason being because I don't think Jared Goff's going to be 100%, and the Seahawks, I think, are just rolling right now.
Copy. So Chris agrees with you. He also has the Seahawks winning this game, and I would assume he would probably have a similar margin. I'm actually going to go the complete opposite direction here. I actually have the Rams getting a shocking, I mean shocking upset victory over the Seahawks, and here's why. Russell Wilson this season, of course, has been phenomenal. He deserves to get a couple MVP votes come the end of the year. Obviously, he's not going to win the MVP like a lot of people were trying to push early, but he deserves some votes. Here's my thing. If you look at the games of when he has struggled, the team that has had his number, to an extent, it's very hard to limit a QB like him. But to the most extent you can limit an elite quarterback. Against the Rams this season, his completion percentage is only 61% against them, which by today's standards is pretty low. He's only completed 473 passing yards in each game, between the two games total, I should say, and then one touchdown to 2 interceptions. DK Metcalf has not been great in the 2 games against the Rams. His average yards per catch is about 10.8, which is down from his 15.7 against most other teams. And that is in part because Jalen Ramsey, while he may not have a lot of interceptions, you can't always look at a cornerback stats for interception. Completion percentage against him is down from when he was first traded to the Rams, when he first arrived to the Rams, and he has played a lot better as he has stayed in LA and gotten comfortable with Sean McVay. And my number one reason for this will be the running game and the defense. I have a lot more confidence in the consistency of what Sean McVay can scheme up compared to what the Seahawks have been able to do this season on the ground. Akers, Henderson, and Malcolm Brown have a real shot. They all could get a couple carries in this game. Akers has had a pretty good year, being the leading rusher on this team. Henderson is tied with Brown, 5 touchdowns apiece. They're both really good. But the key will be the defense. Like I said, Jalen Ramsey has been an issue for Metcalf and Russell this season. But the front 7, Aaron Donald, 13.5 sacks. Leonard Floyd, 10.5 sacks out of nowhere. Dame, when I was looking this up, I learned Leonard Floyd was a Los Angeles Ram. I had no idea that he was a Ram until I looked at these stats. I was completely shocked. And I think that because they've had his number to an extent, they can try to do a similar job. And I just think the Rams may have, the right formula in place to just eke by a victory here. It has just nothing. It's not necessarily, I'm not going to put the game solely on Russell because, he's going to choke it or anything. It's just if there's a team early on that the Seahawks could have had a bad matchup against, it's this team led by Sean McVay, who I think deserves a lot of credit because the Rams, the fact they made the playoffs this year, I think is underrated with the cap situation and everything, how it was looking. It was looking kind of tough. The fact that they made it this far, I think they deserve some props for that. My final score, I kind of have somewhat a low scoring affair, 20-17. It's kind of low scoring compared to most games, but I got the Rams with the upset here because I think, to me, if you've proven you can do it, that gives you confidence, at least from my point of view. And because they've done it twice this season to an extent, Russell Wilson's arguably worst games are against them. I think the Rams have a strong shot here. So I'm going to be the contrarian when it comes to this Rams-Seahawks matchup. Any final thoughts?
I would hope the Rams win because that's better for the Jets with the Seahawks pick. The earlier they're bounced out the playoffs, the better the pick is. So I'll be hoping for that. Right. I just personally don't see it. But yeah,
right, no, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The next game is what? The Bucs in Washington, right?
Yes, they are the final game on Saturday.
Yes. So we already see a lot of talk about this game because after the Washington football team beat the Eagles, you saw the video of Chase Young saying he wants Brady going viral. So there's a lot of talk about this game and that video going around. I want to say the Washington football team is going to pull the upset, but I just can't. I can't see it happening. Uh, the Washington football QB situation is just so uncertain. I saw a report that said Ron Rivera talking about maybe using two quarterbacks in the game, which is I never see that working ever in a game. Um, although Brady is old and he's not the same quarterback he used to be, you just can never count him out. And I just never seen when somebody talks shit to Brady or tries to call him out. I just never see it ending up well at the end for them. Chase Young is a freaking beast. He's a monster. He's one of the best defensive players in the league already as a rookie, but he just needs to calm down. He needs to get to the playoffs, see how the playoffs is, play against Brady, see how that goes first before you're calling people out. I love the energy. I love it. He should
Right.
but like he needs to calm down. So at the end of the day, I have the Bucks 24 and the Washington football team 10 because I don't see them scoring a lot of points because I don't know what's going to happen with their QB situation.
Right, right. I agree. As does Chris. We both have the Buccaneers as well. Yeah, I kind of feel bad for Chase Young. I don't think he meant it to really try to call out Brady. I think it was more he's trying to hype himself and his team up. Like, look, we gotta want to face this guy. We can't be scared. We can't be scared of the 6 rings, the number 12, the TB12, avocado ice cream, and whatever, different type of yoga he does before these games to stay fit at his age. The fact he threw for 40 touchdowns this season at age 43. This dude is just otherworldly. But I feel bad for him because Tom Brady, whether you want to believe it or not, he knows when this kind of stuff is said, it gets back to him. Like top tier athletes, the best of the best in their sports, like him, like a LeBron, their people will get back to them when stuff like this is said, even if it's in passing by a guy trying to be passionate. And ultimately, I have the Bucks winning as well. I have a score of 31-17. Look, like you said, this Washington football team defense is great. Chase Young is going to be great for the future. Again, there's something about these Ohio State top tier defensive ends, man. They could just be game wreckers. But I don't think this Washington team has enough. Even if they get a little bit of stuff going with Young and Sweat on the defensive line, I just look at the offense. Alex Smith, like, look, the story's awesome. He deserves comeback player of the year. Let's get that right out the way. Like, he deserves it without a doubt. Everything he had to go through. But let's be real, he didn't play great this season. 6 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. While the running game is solid, it's just not enough. Look at it. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, I think, is fine. Their real challenge will come in the divisional round and beyond. But just look at the offense. Jones and Fournette combined for 13 touchdowns. And even though the Buccaneers, I don't know if you've seen an update. I'm assuming Mike Evans may not play. But even if he doesn't play, how sad must it be? You lose your number one option, and who do you have to back him up? It's only Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski. You're like,
Yeah.
come on, like, come on, man. So, like,
They'll be
look,
just fine
Washington
without him.
fans. Exactly. Washington fans, look, be proud that you won the NFC East this year. At least you didn't win it with a 6-10 record. You could at least have some solace in that. Have the pride that you won the division and that, Ron Rivera helped fix things. That's fine, but I just don't see them beating Tampa. I just really don't. So yeah, final score for me, 31-17. All of us got Tampa Bay winning this one, and they're going to be moving on to face whoever they'll be facing in the divisional round, according to our predictions. So that is the end of night 1 of the Super Wild Card weekend. That's the end of Saturday. Let's move on to Sunday of Super Wild Card weekend, which I will keep calling it because it kind of is that. The first game of this weekend, another grudge match, another kind of like blood feud. This last year, the Baltimore Ravens and the Tennessee Titans. Dame, this one of all of them. This may be the most physical one.
You're right. So last
Yeah.
year they played each other, right? So the Titans
Yep.
came out with the upset last year to the number 1 seeded. Were they number 1 seed? They were number 2 seed. Regardless,
Yes.
they had Lamar Jackson MVP coming out. Everyone thought it was gonna be easy game and it was gonna set up for the Ravens versus Chiefs. And then Titans came out of nowhere. Derrick Henry had an absolute monster of a postseason, and they took down the Ravens in a shocking upset. This year, I think it's gonna go the other way around. I have the revenge game. The Ravens are going to come out at top. They started the season slow, and midseason they were slow, but towards the end of the regular season, they really turned it around, and I think they're just heading upwards right now. Their offense is playing great. Their defense is playing great. Although I don't think it's going to be a blowout, I think it's going to be a very close game, and the Titans have a really good shot of winning this game. The Ravens are just too good, and they're heading in the right direction right now, while the Titans, you kind of have a lot of question marks about them, especially towards the end of the season. I have the final score as 31-23. I think there's going to be a lot of offense, but I just don't think I think the Ravens are going to be ahead of most of the game, so it's not going to be really enough, I guess, time or much in the game plan for Derrick Henry to really take over the game, because he usually takes over the game when the game is close or when they're up. But I think most of the game the Ravens are really going to be up, and they're going to be really needing to throw the ball more than they are running. So
Right.
that's why I have the
Right.
Ravens coming up top.
Yeah, myself and Chris agree here. You know, this is 3 out of 4 so far. We all have our we all agree on these picks. Look, I think it's a similar extent. I think the final score, of course, will be close. I have it being 31-28. But I just don't think this Tennessee team is right this season. This defense, forget it's just a bit of a step back. They've taken a monumental step back from last season. I don't know if it's just, you know, because there was a bit of the switch in the coaching of who's coaching the defense this year. I don't know if it's just that. I don't know if it was players lost. I like, but what happened to this defense? Like they weren't last season. They were pretty good, you know. In the playoffs, they stepped up against both the Pats and the Ravens, and they did what they could early against the Chiefs before Patrick Mahomes and them exploded. But this season has just been the other way around, and they nearly lost that Houston game. Like I said last week, like I was fully confident that Houston could make a legitimate game. It was nowhere near going to be a blowout, and if it wasn't for the Texans defense outshining the Titans defense in terms of who can be worse that day, the Texans legitimately could have won that contest. Like it wouldn't have been a last second field goal by Tennessee to win or anything. It would have been the Texans winning that game probably by a touchdown if their defense had just played a bit better. So I have Baltimore winning this. I think from the game earlier this season, I think that's the better comparison for what this game could be. The Ravens learned against the Titans to try to have a better pass run balance, which they did not have against them early in the game last year. And I think Lamar's going to be better. The combination of Edwards and Dobbins to support him on the ground is good. And I think we're talking about the defense being poor. That should mean Andrews and Hollywood Brown could have some good games. But I think ultimately, you know, this Ravens defense has something to prove against this Titans team. In nowhere they're going to stop Derrick Henry, who the quietest 2,000 rushing yard season in history, I feel, because I had no idea how close he was. Well, not really how close he was, but how dominant of a game he had to get to the 2,000 until I got the notification. But this this Ravens defense, Judon is there, Bowser's there. They have some more pass rush this season with Calais Campbell and Yannick Ngakoue. Patrick Queen has been great as a rookie, and Peters and Marlon Humphrey combined this season 12 forced fumbles. It's one thing with interceptions. They have forced 12 fumbles between the two of them. So I think ultimately Baltimore edges this one out 31-28, and they get their revenge from last season. And hey, you love seeing stuff like that. Revenge storylines are always nice in sports. Yep. So next up, we have the most interesting game, I think, on Sunday. Well, maybe not. Well, let's say like this. One of the two games on Sunday that will be directly affected due to COVID, the Chicago Bears at the New Orleans Saints. And this is not having any significant update on the situation, until we see an update, Alvin Kamara, I believe, is still ruled out for this game due to COVID, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, for now.
Yeah. Obviously, you know, we have to see if anything changes. I think. See, my thing is, I don't think he's past the. I think if he had a test today, if that comes back negative, and if I think Friday and Saturday come back negative, I think he may have a chance to play, but I'm not certain.
I think he has to have negative tests till the game time.
Right. So, you know, this is a very up in the air situation. I'm going to assume he's out, only because the NFL for the playoffs is pretty strict with it, as we'll get into the final game.
Yeah, you can't have an outbreak in the playoffs. Like, you
exactly.
have to absolutely eliminate any kind of risk to make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and especially not even just an outbreak. In terms of games in the playoffs, like, it's one thing when the regular season games need to be delayed. These networks are not going to be happy with a football playoff game being delayed. That is millions of dollars lost with that game not being there. Like, people don't understand. That's a millions of dollars difference. So I'm going to assume Kamara's not playing unless a miracle happens for the Saints. Dame, who do you got in this one?
This is the one game of the week I have as a blowout, and it's going to be simply put. I have the Saints 38, Bears 13. Simply put, the Saints are a much better football team. With Kamara or not, I think Latavius Murray's going to play. Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, all that. They're playing home. Although there's no fans, it's still a big advantage for them. And just straight up on the other side, it's the Bears. Mr. Trubisky, although he's had an all right end of the season, I just don't trust him at all. The Saints are just a much better football team. I see this game as being really the one blowout of the week, 38-13.
Right. No, I definitely agree. Trubisky is Trubisky is that's a whole different conversation I don't really want to have because I don't want to get upset right now. Um, you know, this game I need to admit right now, this is the hardest game for me to look at because and this is why, because Michael Thomas I believe is not playing. He's been injured nearly the entire year, and the only reason that's not been as noticeable is because Alvin Kamara has been a beast this season on both ends. He is the Saints' leading rusher and receiver. That's how much he's meant to the offense this season. If he misses this game definitively, I'm very kind of 50-50. I really am. I understand Latavius Murray has had some great games with the Saints, and I think ultimately that's why I'm going to give the slightest of edges to New Orleans. But I need to say this. I'm not fully confident in saying that. And trust me, I have the lowest possible confidence in Mitchell Trubisky. I don't think Chicago should keep him at all. But the bottom line to me is this: Kamara not being there and Michael Thomas not being there is going to affect Drew Brees more than most people will realize. I don't really have a score for this because that's how much I was deliberating this. But if I had to pick a final score for this one, I'll give it like a 27-17 game because I think this Bears defense is still good enough to where they'll limit the Saints here and there. Kyle Fuller is a great and underrated corner, and Eddie Jackson is one of the best safeties in the game. So without having to deal with a Michael Thomas or a Kamara that helps them, Roquan Smith and Khalil Mack are massive in terms of pressuring Breeze. And we saw last year if you pressure him like Minnesota did last year, you can do some damage. And that was with Kamara and Michael Thomas. So I'm not confident at all in this pick. I'm really not. I would not. I know you have it as a blowout, and Chris picked the Saints to win. I wouldn't be shocked if he had it as a blowout. I truly would not be surprised in any way if the Bears somehow, some way, miraculously pulled this off. Because I think for older quarterbacks, the skill positions matter. The Giants in the final years of Eli, people don't understand how important Odell was to making Eli look better than what he was. Big Ben, part of the reason he's been kind of off here and there, he doesn't have that bona fide superstar as a running back or a receiver like he had with AB and Bell. I fully agree that they had to obviously make those moves because the locker room chemistry and all that, but when you miss the talent for an older QB, it shows. And that's my only concern with Breeze. Because he looked good last season when he came back from that thumb injury he had, but then that playoff game was a different story. He's looked good since he came back this season, but will the playoffs be a different story again? In New Orleans, which again, the game last year there's so many parallels to last season, and that's my concern. But I'll have the Saints just barely eking this one out.
Yeah, I mean, I understand completely all the concerns with the Saints. Their recent playoff struggles, Drew Brees not looking the same, their COVID issues, their injury issues. The biggest thing to me is just the Bears. I just don't like them at all. I don't trust them at all. So that's why I have it such a blowout.
Right. No, I definitely don't. I don't blame you at all. I don't blame you at all because like this Chicago Bears team should not inspire anything. Shouldn't inspire anything at all. But yeah. So the final game, Dame. This is going to be an interesting one.
This is going to be a very interesting one. The Browns this week have a lot of COVID issues. Their head coach isn't even be coaching this game. They have a couple other coaches out, a couple players out. It's going to be interesting to see how this game really goes, especially because it's such a big rivalry with the Steelers and Browns. They played last week. The Steelers came out on top. No, the Browns came up on top, right? Yeah. Browns came up on top. That was a Mason Rudolph out. Of course, they didn't see Big Ben. Maybe that's why they sat Big Ben, because they didn't want to show their whole game plan, knowing that this was a possible playoff matchup. I don't know,
right.
But My prediction is gonna be this is gonna be also one of the best games, just like the Colts and Bills are. The first game and the last game being the best games. I have the Steelers with 20, Browns 14. Is gonna be a very defensive game, I think. Not a lot of touchdowns, but a lot of field goals and short drives. The reason I have the Steelers is because of all these COVID issues. I think it's gonna be really hard for Baker to be on top of his game. There's gonna be a lot of distractions. A lot of this stuff is gonna be straight up on him, calling the plays and audibling and thinking of how to adjust. A lot of it's gonna come down to him because of all these coaches that are out. The Steelers, I just think, are also the better team. Big Ben coming back, of course. I think they're gonna win this game. But I think it's gonna be a very good one. It's gonna be interesting to see how the Browns play.
Right. No, I definitely agree. It's going to be interesting to see, without your head coach, without a couple other coaches. I think 2 position coaches are out. Joel Bitonio is out, which is a big reason that I personally have the Steelers winning. I'm right there with you, Dame. I just think that the Browns, how Cleveland is it that they finally make the playoffs and they're losing so many pieces because of COVID? And they lost Odell earlier in the season for injury. That's just a stick in the craw, I think, if you're a Browns fan. I kind of feel bad for them. They don't deserve all this. But I will say, interestingly enough, Chris has picked the Browns to win this game. I did not ask for elaboration. I think it's funnier if we save it for next week, depending on the result, and he can either gloat at us that he picked the Browns, or we can ask him, why did you think they would win? So tune back in for the reaction to that next week, ladies and gentlemen. But Chris has the Browns. I'm with you. I think overall, just the Steelers, they rested their guys, kind of like you said, they rested their starters in week 17, and Mason Rudolph played the best game of his career so far, against the Browns. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, of course, are a great running back duo. They're going to be a massive help for Baker Mayfield and Jarvis Landry to not have to carry the load in terms of passing. And this defense, to me, the outcome of this game will swing on the Browns defense. If Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward look good in this contest, I think the Browns actually could win this. But Garrett hasn't looked the same since he contracted COVID. I think Denzel Ward, he's probable for this game, or questionable, one or the other, but all signs are kind of pointing that he will play because it's a playoff game, team, NFL football pride, all that, he's probably going to play. But just the Steelers team, even if the offense, my only concern with them is the offense, but the receiving core is so deep with Deontay Johnson. Chase Claypool has been great this as his rookie season, Juju Smith-Schuster, Ebron Washington. They have so many weapons. And I hope if Randy Fichtner gets Connor and Snell Jr. more involved rushing, I think they'll have a solid chance at, pulling away with this one, making the final score look like a little bit closer than it was, one of those games. But this defense, TJ Watt, Stephon Tuitt, Cam Hayward, in the front 7. And then in the backfield, you have Minkah Fitzpatrick, you have Edmonds, Joe Hayden against the team that drafted him and made him miss the playoffs so many years early in his career. And whoever they put opposite to him, I think is probably going to be Nelson. I just think overall the Steelers have enough to get by this game. And it feels weird to say that, but it's only because of how they looked close to the end, even though they played a lot better in that Colts game. That's what's giving me the confidence in them, and their defense, of course. I think the Steelers have enough to overcome this Browns team.
Yeah, it's really interesting that Chris has the Browns. I'm shocked by that. I'm going to have to talk to him about this. So we're going to have to hear from him next week.
Exactly. That I honestly, because I know Chris is going to want to hear from me what in my mind made me pick the Rams and even potentially consider the Bears. So, we're all going to have to answer to things next week. We're not going to predict the whole playoffs. We're going to go round by round. Yeah, we're going to go week by week to see. Now, for ourselves personally, how we do, I actually do pretty well normally with the NFL playoffs. So I'm kind of hoping I have another good year, but that's more myself personally. It's going to be interesting to see how things go out. And this could be a really interesting playoffs, Dame. I kind of want to get this, let this be the final thoughts. How do you think this playoffs will turn out? Because I just think overall it's going to be relatively intriguing, some of these matchups.
It is, like you said, this is kind of the super wild card weekend because it's the first time there's so many games going on because of the extra playoff team and the only one bye. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one bye really gives an advantage to the Chiefs and the Packers, and how much of a disadvantage some of these teams are going to be that they don't have that bye, like the Saints or the Bills.
Right. And also some of these matchups, we're the potential matchups we could see. Like in my predictions, I have the Rams as the lowest seed moving on. So in my predictions, I have the Rams against the Packers in the NFC divisional playoffs. Aaron Donald and Aaron Rodgers, that would be a battle.
Mm-hmm.
And in the AFC side of things, I have Steelers Bills being the matchup, but I have we both have, all of us actually have Chiefs Ravens because the Ravens are the lowest remaining seed
That's
from
gonna
our.
be one hell of a game. That's what we
Yeah.
wanted last year for the AFC Championship, so that's gonna be one hell of a game this year.
Yeah, so a whole lot of different matchups we could see this year, depending on what happens. And again, it's been such a weird year. Maybe are some of these teams going to overperform come the playoffs because it's the 1 game sample? Will we see narratives continue, like Brady, having the confidence in him still? It's really going to be an interesting year to see who comes out on top in these matchups.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So with that, all of that being said, that brings us to an end on this episode of the show. Once again, Chris was unable to make it. Nothing for anything serious. He just had a couple things he had to take care of. So he entrusted us. And you know what, Dame? I think we did a pretty good job.
We did great.
Yes,
Even
absolutely.
better that he wasn't here.
No, Chris, we love you. We miss you, bud. Like I said, that just about wraps it up for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you once again for joining us on another episode here of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. Like I said, we will be back next week with our reactions to Wildcard Weekend and talking about them in the next round. And, if any big news pops up, we're definitely going to cover it like we did with the Lindor trade and the NFL openings. Our favorite thing to talk about is big things happening in sports. And, let's hope for a couple ones these next couple weeks. Right, Dame?
Yep. Hopefully.
Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all once again for joining us and tuning in, and we will see you all next week.
Peace.